Welcome back to Uncovering Real Estate, brought to you by the Brampton Real Estate Board. Mark, before the break, we were talking about the importance of a home inspection. What defects does a seller have to disclose when they're selling to a buyer?
It's a very important question, Wasim, because as you know, a home inspector can't see everything. They can't see behind walls. They can just see what's in front of them. So a seller, for example, does not have to disclose defects that you could see. So let's say a cracked window.
Okay.
Or let's say that under an area rug, there's some cracked tiles. Well, you're expected to look for those things themselves. And I always say to buyers, check everything. Lift the toaster oven off the counter, see if it's covering a crack. Because to me, if it's covering a crack, that tells me this seller may be a little bit dishonest. If they're covering a small crack here, maybe they're doing other things. So check as much as you can when you're visiting that house.
And it is within the buyer's rights to do that.
They can do that. When you're looking at the house, they should do that.
Okay.
But then, you know, certain defects you can see. Even a home inspector can't look behind the walls.
Right.
He can't tell if there's a problem with the foundation. So if it's a serious defect that the seller knows about, like a foundation problem, floods that have not been properly repaired, mold behind the walls, they must be disclosed to a buyer, or else after closing, even the buyer can sue the seller if it comes out later.
And that's why we're seeing an increasing phenomenon, I believe, in the last few years, where it's not only the buyers that arrange for home inspections, sellers also arrange for home inspections, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, lots of times sellers will do this. They'll arrange for the home to be inspected, and they'll give the inspection on the table so buyers can look at it, hoping that maybe the buyers will say, oh, the house looks good, I'll make an offer without a home inspection condition. But you have to understand, you don't know what the seller and the home inspector were discussing. If any language was changed a little bit, you should still have your own home inspection.
Okay. Now, not that we want this situation to happen, but it is conceivable that, you know, a person could buy a house in which a major crime took place, possibly even a murder, possibly even a suicide. What are the protocols to follow in such a scenario?
Yeah, this is a tough issue.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just that, Wasim.
Yeah.
Let's say the neighbor is a registered pedophile.
Oh boy.
Do you have to disclose that? These are very difficult issues, and the law is extremely scarce.
Okay.
So while you would think you have to disclose, a lot of lawyers will take the position that you do not have to disclose this, that it's evolving the law. And so this is why, if I'm acting for a buyer, if you're concerned, put in a clause that says the seller says straight out there has been no murder or suicide on the property. Then the seller must answer truthfully. Google the property. Google the property. If there's been a crime, there may be something that shows up on Google. There's also a website called House Creep, like a creep.com, where they actually, you type in an address and they'll tell you if there's been a murder or suicide on the property. So you see, you're getting to the point where you can find out. Also, if you have time, speak to the neighbors, because neighbors will tell you what's going on. And you know, I find myself, a lot of people will sell their home because of fights with their neighbors, and they're never going to tell a buyer this. And so this is why.
Is that true?
Oh, it's a big reason, because they're having all these fights with neighbors. And so to me, I would talk to all the neighbors and find out not just about the house, but about the neighbors on either side as well. Just ask what kind of people they are, because you may find out that, you know, if you move in and you find out your neighbor is that crazy neighbor, that's not a happy position to be in. So the more research you do, and that's why you've got to try to walk neighborhoods that you're interested first. Before you even put offers, walk around the neighborhood that you're interested in, speak to the neighbors, and you'll find out a lot about that neighborhood.
So sometimes those are probably even more effective tools than your standard background checks and credit checks, because you are actually getting a first-hand experience of where you're going to call home.
Sure, that's so important. Like, of course, for a family, schools, the distance to schools, transit. These are the key things, of course, you're looking for first. Check, check, check. But there's nothing, in my opinion, that compares to wandering around a neighborhood, talking to people. This is where you want to raise your family. You want to know that you can talk to people.
Mark, you mentioned, you know, adding a clause in the contract. What are maybe some other important things that we haven't covered that one should look to add in a contract?
Yeah, so number one, you would want to make sure that the appliances are all working. Everything is working on closing. So that's number one, because you're buying maybe 2 months in advance. You want to make sure everything's working on closing. You'll want to make sure that you get all the keys. I know these are small things, but lots of times I get complaints, there's only one garage door opener. We have 2 cars. So, you want to make sure you get 2 sets of keys, garage door openers, mailbox keys. Sometimes you have to go pay Canada Post for this $100, but buyers need to know this. So these are small things, but they're very important. The house should be left in a clean and broom swept condition. You don't want to walk into a house, a bunch of garbage on the day of closing. So there's a lot of extra clauses that you can put in, and others depending on seasonality. So as an example, if it's the winter time and you're buying a swimming pool, how do you know the pool is working?
Yeah.
So you see, you may have to put in a clause that says, you know what, we'll hold back a little bit of money until May when we can open the pool, and then we'll open the pool, and as long as everything's working, fine. If not, we'll use the money from this holdback to fix the pool equipment. So, depending on the time of year as well, will determine whether any additional clauses need to go into the contract.
Okay. I understand also a lot of people face this situation where they buy a house, it might be carpeted, but the previous owner had pets. Is that something that can be added into a clause too, that it needs to be well shampooed and so on?
I think that where a home has any kind of damages, I think, I'm not a big fan of saying that the seller has to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
Because then there's going to be a fight the day before closing. I always know the buyer's going to call me and say, he didn't do the work.
Right.
And the seller's lawyer is going to say, he did do the work.
Right.
So it's like, to me, just, take that into account when you make your offer price. That yes, you might have to pay to shampoo, yes, because sometimes it's better that you're doing the work anyways.
Right.
Because you're caring for it more. The seller's just maybe doing the minimum possible to satisfy his obligation. To me, take this into account when you make your offer in the first place, and then do the work properly, maybe before you move in a couple of days.
More with Mark right after the break here on Uncovering Real Estate.